Welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Today is Monday, March 30th, 2020. Hope everyone is having a great day. That's actually the wrong one. Here we go. All right, let's take a look at some space weather real quick. Our solar wind speed's coming in at 509.4 kilometers per second. That's that solar wind stream that we were expecting between the 29th and the 30th. It has arrived. KP indices are sitting at a 4 with a 24-hour max of a 4. And so not quite yet, what do you call G1 activity just yet. Now, that could change as long as this solar wind stream is continuing to flow, bombard Earth's magnetic field. We do have a minor sunspot, and actually that's why I kind of had this one keyed up, but you guys can see it really good on this version here. And it is not named. The sunspot is very small. It's sunspot number 11, has not been labeled AR20 anything yet. And this broke a 15-day streak of sunspots, now down to 0, still 69 days in 2020 without sunspots. That's 77% of the year thus far without sunspots. Let's go ahead and check out the grandsolarminimum.com here and take a look at some more space weather statistics. There you see our solar X-ray flux. A little bit of up and down here lately. That's incoming solar wind. There's sunspot now that is turning around from the eastern limb. After that, though, we really aren't sitting on much activity, as you can see in the overall look. That's our sunspot right there. It is a member of solar cycle 25. The polarity has been reversed, plus the latitude of the location. And you see after this sunspot, guys, really it's kind of quiet. Nothing really to expect. So we had a break in the action. Had 16 days in a row without sunspots. And this probably won't last much longer, but nonetheless, we still have a sunspot. And we will reset the counter from here. All right, let's go into some headlines here. Start at the watchers.news. Severe storm triggers the 100-year flood in Cleveland, Ohio. Says here that heavy overnight storms in Ohio triggered major flood in Cleveland on Sunday, March 29th, 2020. According to the National Weather Service, the Cuyahoga River reached 21.6 feet, which is considered to be major flood, and it's also the 7th highest level on record. Several people had to be rescued in some areas. Roads and streets were closed, and a few utility customers remained without power until this morning. Widespread inundations had resulted in a number of rescues in the area. One man in the city's east side was saved from the basement of his apartment after water levels reached as high as his chest. Fire Chief Angelo Cavillo said the crew had to break a window by bending steel bars to save the man. A fireman was injured during that rescue operation. And here are some images from the flooding that occurred on the 29th. Another officer and sergeant were taken to the hospital after being exposed to cold waters for aiding civilians. In downtown Cleveland, the Cuyahoga River hits levels of 21.6 feet, which is the 7th highest ever. According to the National Weather Service, it is also considered a 1% flood known as the 100-year flood. According to the USGS, the term 100-year flood is used in an attempt to simplify the definition of a flood that statistically has a 1% chance of occurring in any given year. Likewise, the term 100-year storm is used to define a rainfall event that statistically has the same, I just said that. Okay, so the National Weather Service said anything above 17 feet is considered a major flood. Obviously, we're about 4.5 feet over that level. The highest crest level ever in that river was 23.2, so not too far away from the record. Inundations were reported as well in Cleveland Metro Park's Rocky River Reservation along the river, with raging waters blocking several roads. Cedar Avenue and Stokes Boulevard, along with other streets and intersections, were closed Sunday morning. Meanwhile, roughly 400 utility customers remain without electricity as of early this morning. Following the severe weather, most outages were reported in Cuyahoga and Lorain counties. Power is expected to be restored at some point today. Now, this was part of the same storm that ripped through most parts of the Northeast last night as well. And let me tell you, it dropped a heavy amounts of rain. Now, here in upstate New York, we only got 1 or 2 lines of this heavy rain, some moderate rain throughout most of the day, but we got quite an impressive rainfall. And there was hail reported actually in some areas near Saratoga Falls. So some severe weather that rolled through the Midwest and into the Northeast, well, left one city its 100-year flood. And this next story, well, ironically, there's something in common here that happened in Cleveland. Let's read. Another intense Kona low hit Hawaii on Saturday, March 28th. Now, this was the day before 2020, causing major flooding in Kauai Island and bringing the total of rainfall nearly to, listen to this, 80 inches for the month of March. Guys, I've been doing this channel since early 2017. And every year I see things that I feel like I've reported on. And it is a repetitive that, especially Hawaii, the last 2 years have been flooded out pretty bad. It started in 2017, 18 and 19 got a little worse. And this year we're talking about huge amounts of rain, 80 inches of rain for 1 month of March. A rare flash flood emergency was issued for Kauai as another wave of floods already hit the soaked island. The worst affected part of the island was the eastern portion, with up to 10 inches of rain. Floodwater submerged vehicles, closed roads, and forced residents to evacuate their homes after massive debris from upstream slammed into the Walu Bridge, creating a makeshift dam. Our first responders assisted numerous residents in evacuating their flooded homes. Cars were entirely underwater in some areas. Police were closing some roads due to high water. A local named Mike Loretta said the flooding along the Walu River was the worst he had witnessed in 30 years and was quoted saying, "If this was a 50 or 100-year flood, this is it." So, you know me and correlations. Back-to-back stories, lots of rain. Obviously, Cleveland didn't get hit with that much. But again, 2 reports, 2 days back-to-back, we hear of 100-year floods. And that, for you folks out there who follow this channel, you know exactly where this amount of rainfall is coming from. The amount of cosmic radiation that's in our atmosphere mixed in with water vapor. I mean, these highly charged particles are like magnets for water vapor. Reading on here, it says Lahu recorded about 7.3 inches on Saturday, while Kauai saw about 6.6 inches. Meanwhile, to the south at Port Allen Airport registered only 0.08 inches. One USGS station located at high elevation recorded up to 2 feet of rain in just 3 days, bringing its monthly total to 80 inches this March. That just seems like a lot of rain. Showers with a 60% chance of precipitation are also in the forecast from Thursday to Saturday, April 2nd to April 1st. I guess a dry day out there will be an April Fool's Day joke at this point. Isolated showers and a 20% chance of precipitation are expected on Sunday, April 5th. And here's a listing of all the rainfall throughout Hawaii. Guys, go ahead and check out watchers.news for all of the info. Also, I want to bring up, too, on March 17th, a powerful Kona low placed all islands under a flash flood watch with a rare tornado warning issued for Niha for the first time in 11 years. Oh, how I love connecting the dots to solar cycles. I love it. We're in a minimum right now, guys. 11 years ago, we were in a minimum. So there's so many things that we read. And this is part of the reason why I go through all these articles. Because it's not out there saying grand solar minimum, and grand solar minimum. You got to read between the lines. We know that every solar minimum brings an abundant amount of cosmic radiation to our atmosphere, highly charged particles. We see a lot of these bizarre rain events, snow events, these heavier amounts during these minimum cycles. Now, again, just another correlation, another article bringing up the 100-year flood terminology, and then it fits it in nicely at the end here and talking about how this is the first time they've had a warning like this in 11 years. In other words, what I'm saying is these solar minimums are known to produce events like this around the world. Not all at once. Not everybody's going to get their 100-year flood in the same weekend or the same week. But it just seems to me a little bit too coincidental that 11 years ago, for the first time, they had a rare tornado warning issued for this area. And I bet you they had tons of flash flooding and rain as well during that month. All right, let's get on to some ice news here because, well, we don't talk about it as much. And I might be butchering the name of this this glacier here, so forgive me on this. But this is a recent paper published in the Swedish journal, series A Physical Geography, authored by Holmlund and Holmlund, found by the strongest melts of the Storglaciern in Sweden occurred between the 1930s and the 1960s. Reading on, the glacier mass even increased from the early 1970s into the mid-1990s. According to the authors, geodetic volume estimates of the Storglaciern in Sweden suggest 28% loss in total ice mass between 1910 and 2015. But the greatest part of the melt occurred during the mid-20th century, a time when CO2 levels were deemed to be at a safe level. So why are we bringing this up? Because a lot of the battle that we face in this community deals with AGW folks who believe that CO2 is causing the temperature warp. The CO2 is melting the ice. But this study establishes that we had more melt during 1910 and 2015 and in the mid-20th century, where levels were deemed to be safe when it came to CO2. So my question is, what's your explanation, AGW, for why we have more melting ice in the mid-20th century when CO2 levels are at its lowest or a safe level? And then we fast forward here at the bottom. Over the past 10 years, Arctic sea ice minimum has not fallen in over a decade. Now, by the way, we're looking at CO2 levels between the last decade, the last 380 parts per million, up right now to 412 parts per million is where we are. And I'm just giving you a ballpark range between the last 10 years. So in the mid-20th century, we had CO2 levels that were in that safe zone. And right now, we are looking at the highest CO2 levels we've seen in, well, space age time, I guess, since recent record. And yet, here at the bottom, we are reading that it appears Arctic ice melt has slowed down over the recent decades and is not accelerated like global warming alarmists claim. Now, you would think, since the CO2 levels were at a safe level during the majority of the melt, you would think, guys, you can see it right here on the dang on chart. Dang on chart right here. CO2 levels were weak, low. They weren't unsafe, remember? Well, you don't, because it wasn't a thing back then. But my point is, we're at record level CO2, and ice melt and gains are pretty close. So I'd like to hear the explanation from some of these AGW folk out there trying to explain to me how we're in record CO2 and the Arctic ice seems to be stabilizing. And it's showing some gains as well. I know this year it did. Anyway, guys, check out the article, notrickzone.com. And let's shift the gears a little bit here. UN warns of global food shortage caused by coronavirus measures report. Now, I try to keep the topic of the virus separate from this channel. But guys, I got to be honest with you, it's really, really hard to find a lot of stuff that's not talking about this. So I thought I'd mention this because I know a lot of us follow people like Ice Age Farmer, and he's been talking about food shortages for a long time. Some folks don't believe it's going to be that extreme. Some folks do. But now that we have problems with our food supply, possibly from this virus, on top of weather and crop shortages from damaged crops, this is going to make things a little bit more interesting. And this reads here: the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization warned of a global food shortages caused by measures to stem the spread of the novel coronavirus. The worst that can happen is that governments restrict the flow of food, says Maximo Torrio, the chief economist at the UN Food and Agricultural Organization. Now, he tells The Guardian, harvests have been good and staple crops remain in demand, but a shortage of field workers brought on by the pandemic and move towards protectionism, tariffs, and export bans could lead to problems in the coming weeks. All measures against free trade will be counterproductive. Now is not the time for restrictions or putting in place trade barriers. Now is the time to protect the flow of food around the world, Toro added. Some countries have begun to protect their food supplies by restricting exports, which Torero reportedly said could lead to an overall decrease in trade and subsequent decline in food production. Trade barriers will create extreme volatility. Also, they will make the situation worse. That's what we observe in food crises. Another measure that could threaten the world's food supply is the nations have issued stay-at-home orders and varying levels of enforcement. If agricultural workers are legally unable to harvest crops, it could cause a lapse in food flow. Coronavirus is affecting the labor force. Logistical problems are becoming very important. We need to have policies in place so the labor force can keep doing their job, protect people, but we need labor force. Major countries have yet to implement these sorts of policies, if they can keep moving or not. Guys, I tell you what. There's a lot to be thinking about with not only do we have already some issues with flooding. Actually, let me bring that up for you real quick. So I've always talked about, the crop situation. How are the fields going to be for this spring coming up? Thinking, this spring is just going to be hampered by cold temperatures, lots of moisture, and, flooding causing delays in the planting. And then you read articles like this. And like I said, I don't want to combine the virus stuff here on this channel. That's for our sister channel, WTF Sky. But on top of the situation that we could already be in, and what I mean by this, on top of the grand solar minimum stuff, you got this virus that's hampering workers. Minor is the lighter orange areas for flooding right now for the spring. So here's where we're going to have most of our crops planted, right in here, down here in the south. Nebraska, if you live in the western parts of the Dakotas, Nebraska and Kansas, you are looking A-OK. Anything east of the Mississippi, though, is in minor to moderate to major flood, especially up here in Minnesota and North Dakota, parts of South Dakota. We will see flooding along the Mississippi and the Ohio River as this spring continues. So with what we're talking about here with the UN, worried about labor force harvesting, that's if we get the crops planted in certain areas too. So not only are we going to be battling the weather, but we could be battling this trade restriction and the flow of food coming in from other places around the world. So Mari and I have preached about it. Everybody in the chat has also preached about this too. You guys are really good about talking about gardens. And now is the time of the year. And that's what we have these live chats here for. We want you guys to share ideas. We do have forums on the websites. We still haven't got everything worked out with the website, but it's really time we start talking about gardens and how we're going to plant, where we're going to plant, what we're going to plant, and how are you going to continue to have a rotating harvest throughout the entire planting season. That's the most important thing. You do one harvest and you've got maybe a couple days worth of food. So we need to think about things like having crops, indoor growing, whatever it is you're going to do, but you want them rotating. And I'm talking about these small gardens here, indoor grow operations. I don't expect everybody to have property like a farm, but we are going to have to kick it in an extra gear this year when it comes to growing produce. I do believe it might just help us for our own sakes. Potatoes, corn, if you can grow it. I know cucumbers. I like cucumbers. Celery. I like celery. Carrots. There is a lot happening right now that I think has motivated me more, and Mari as well, to want to start preparing a little better and being a little bit more self-reliant during this period of time. Guys, not only are we dealing with this pandemic around the world, but we still are at the very beginning, the tip of the iceberg of the grand solar minimum, which has only begun. And yeah, we're getting ready to head into a very weak solar cycle 25. I can pretty much hang my hat on those predictions because the predictions I'm following are the people that I look up to for reliable information. They've been right for the last 3 years. They continue to be right. And in my opinion, as far as solar activity, everything is happening according to schedule. When I show you guys the GFS forecast, I'll show you my concerns about if we're going to be seeing normal spring temperatures for all of the United States, or are there going to be some areas that are going to be struggling to get up to temperature. So that's another thing too. We got more cloud coverage. We got more moisture in the atmosphere. We have a lot more flooding happening. You got to have certain temperatures. You got to have a certain amount of sunlight. We had some weak yields last year in some of our crops. Just a lot to think about. So when you read stories like this, and it's talking about, this is a logic article. It's a reason for concern. And then throw in the fact that we have to worry about complications with crops from grand solar minimum conditions. All right, let's take a look at, let's go to Europe first, and then we'll look at the South. Winter expected to maintain a firm grip over Southeast Europe. Now, I talked about this earlier. I think it was last Friday, but it was last Monday. Wintry conditions will continue to hang on across the Balkan Peninsula this week as a number of storms track across the southern and southeastern Europe. A cold front will move across Central Europe and into Eastern Europe early this week. Showers followed into the front into Poland on Monday. Snow continued to pile up in southern Germany and the Alps. A fresh blanket of 1 to 2 feet of snow in the highest elevations. Simultaneously, a storm moving into the eastern half of the Mediterranean Sea, funneling more moisture into the southeastern Europe. These two storms will work together, bringing occasional showers across much of southern Europe into Tuesday. Meanwhile, cold air following behind the front in the north will allow temperatures to decline through the week. After starting off the past weekend near 59 degrees in cities like Berlin and Warsaw, the mercury struggled to reach 41 degrees Fahrenheit on Monday. Highs around 63 in Budapest and Bucharest, Romania on Sunday were replaced with temperatures at 40 degrees, so like a 25-degree drop. As temperatures drop around or below freezing through Monday night, areas that receive mainly rain during the day could experience a changeover to snow, especially in the higher elevations. In the south, temperatures outside the mountains will remain too high for snow. Periods of rain will spread from southern Italy to Greece into Tuesday. Widespread rainfall totals across are remaining around 1 inch, but any locally heavy downpour could lead to flash flooding, especially in the areas that have received repeated downpours through late March. What seems to be in common here around the world? 100-year flood in Cleveland, 100-year flood in Hawaii, lots of moisture that just keeps regenerating here in Europe. And we've seen heavy floods in Iran and Iraq as well. In my opinion, I think the GSM is ramped up pretty good. A lot of this news is being shadow banned due to what's happening with this virus. So that's another reason why I try to separate this channel from that topic, is try to keep you guys up to date on some of the headlines around the world. Meanwhile, everything else is falling apart. Grand solar minimum is well intact. So that's just a little bit of a weather outlook for you folks out there in Europe. I haven't done a weather report in a long time. I promise you guys we're slowly getting back to a normal schedule at some point. It's getting there. Southern U.S. braces for more heavy rainfall, severe weather through Tuesday. Once again, severe weather tonight for central Oklahoma, parts of Dallas, and Shreveport. Heavy to locally severe thunderstorms can rumble along a corridor near Shreveport, Baton Rouge to Jackson, Mississippi later Monday afternoon into Monday night. Clouds and showers earlier in the day may be the deterrent for widespread severe weather to occur in this zone. A separate corridor of feisty storms may fire up across the southern plains from the southeastern Colorado through southwestern Kansas into the Texas and Oklahoma panhandles today. Damaging winds, large hail, downpours, and even isolated tornadoes are possibilities for these regions here at risk. And then we look here for our Tuesday night. Local flash flooding, reduced visibility, travel disruptions, a storm max of 3 inches of rain in parts out this way. Again, more heavy rain to inundate the south of the United States. Everybody is getting their fair share. Tuesday, severe weather for Florida, Alabama, Georgia, and we've had some record heat down there as well. So we'll keep our eyes on that. We've got a lot getting ready to start up here for the month of April coming up. Spring is already active. Let's take a look at what the GFS will show us. Actually, you know what? Before we do that, let's take a look at our 3-day forecast here according to NOAA. This is for today, obviously. Rain and mixed precipitation in the northeast. Some very severe weather possible tonight for Louisiana, parts of Arkansas and Mississippi. Flash flooding also to occur. The Northwest is just a little bit of mixed bag of everything. Then tomorrow, more of the same for the South. Heavy rain, thunderstorms possible, severe at times for the panhandle of Florida and southern parts of Georgia and Alabama. Mixed precipitation to upstate New York and just plain old snow, the northern tip of Maine. Meanwhile, the Northwest and the northern plains still experiencing that mix of winter and spring, as temperatures up north do not improve, folks. And I'll show you that here just in a clip. If I can get this day 3. There we go. Day 3, Wednesday. Look at all that snow in Idaho, Montana, Wyoming. Mixed precip in Washington and Oregon. Same for the rest of the northern plains with a chance for some icing. Some light rain across Nebraska and Kansas. Watch out there, Matt. Parts of the mid-Atlantic will also see some light rain showers and mixed precip on Wednesday. So let's take a look at our tropical tidbits. And here is Tuesday's weather. There's that soaker moving through the East Coast. Snow in the Northwest and Canada as well. Look at that. South Dakota, parts of Northeast Nebraska, and parts of Colorado will see snow on Friday, April 3rd, through the Dakotas, through Minnesota, and a pretty good amount of it too, guys. This could be a 3 to 6 inches blizzard-like conditions, depending on what the wind is like as well. Nothing major, but for the first couple days of April, again, 3 to 6 in most of these regions you see in the darker shade of blue is not out of the question, with icing possible in areas as well. High pressure builds in behind that, bringing some colder air to the northern plains and the Northwest. And we're on a little bit of a ridge here in the Northeast as more rain moves through the Ohio Valley and the southern parts of the United States on Tuesday, April 7th, after we deal with this current batch of rain and severe weather. Possibly next Tuesday, the same timeline for the following week, we could be getting a repeat of the South, what we're getting right now. Rain for the Northeast, snow for the Northwest, more rain to the Midwest and the Northeast by April 9th. Temperatures all over the place in the northern plains and Northwest, and also the Northeast starting to break down a little bit towards the second week of April. We've got a situation here where we are looking at cold in the Northeast, cold temperatures in the Northwest, spring-like conditions here. This low is just spinning all this moisture and moving to the east. Move a little bit further into April. More rain to the Northeast, mild temperatures, but look at the amount of snow back here in the Rockies, Wyoming, western Nebraska. Matt, you may get a chance to get some heavy snow for South Dakota, Minnesota, Again, this is about a week and a half out, but not looking good for you folks. And this is where we have to watch too for blizzard-like conditions. When you see these isobars nice and tight like that, we're going to have windy conditions, heavy snow. This area I could definitely see having a blizzard advisory for at least a few hours before it finally moves out. More soaking rain for the Midwest into the South, severe weather possible April 14th, rain across the Northeast. But look at this. Yes, that is snow for upstate New York on April 15th.
Why are you saying yes? What's wrong with you?
I'm just verifying that we are looking at cold temperatures for the middle of April, and the Northeast and the Northwest are sharing an identical weather pattern. But look at Ohio. Let's look at the temperatures real quick. I'm not rooting for this. I'm just proving a point. A lot of folks think that global warming is still intact, but middle of April, look, we start to see some mild conditions in the South going through now, and then things are cooling off. This is April 2nd, getting pretty good for the central part of the United States. The southern looks good. Northwestern, northern plain states still looks like winter, and you could see how sharp this cold front is. Look at this. Look at this. Just got to look at it. 46 here in Oklahoma, and then you got 70s right down here. 80s even further south. Freezing temperatures still in the northern plains. This cold front will move across the country. That dips pretty far south for April, if you ask me. April 6th, highs in the 60s. Now this looks like spring for y'all in Ohio, Tennessee, Kentucky, everywhere else. This is just beautiful weather here, April 7th. And then another cold front comes down from the north, pushing down this warmer air that is trying to reach up to the Ohio Valley. But this cold front, believe it or not, in the Arctic, is going to be a lot stronger. I like this right here. Look at this. This is the wacky GSM weather, folks. Ridge and fridge. You heard me talking about it in February and March. Well, we could have 82 degrees on Monday, April 13th, and then overnight lows into the 30s within 2 days. So 50-degree drop in 36 hours. Highs struggling to get out of the 40s at that point. So you talk about a huge whiplash in temperatures, and that's for April 15th. Overnight temperatures are going to be below freezing in the Northeast and the Northwest. I'm going to go out on a limb and say this now. I'm not going to be surprised if we see a cooler summer, especially in the Northeast, but the Northwest and parts of the Northern Plains as well. This could be just our typical April off and on cold and mild, but at the same time, with the amount of volcanic activity we've had this year, the amount of cloud cover we are experiencing now, cosmic radiation equals cloud nucleation. I mean, you know, this is what we've talked about. So we're talking about a delayed plating season, possibly to flooding. Delayed plating season because we can't get the soil temperatures right now. Looking at this here for April 15th, folks in Kansas and Nebraska, I don't know if you're going to have a problem with soil temps. It's not going to be for everybody here. Arkansas, Missouri as well, you should be fine. But, you know, I am concerned for Iowa, Minnesota, parts of northern Wisconsin, the Dakotas. I am concerned for the soil temps up there at this time of year, yes. But we have plenty of time. I mean, as long as we get our crop in the ground by June, I mean, then we're looking okay. But it's when we start getting past June 1st where we have to start to worry a little bit. And I know one thing, talking about farming, thank you to Matt Bros, who's been a huge mentor with that, but also watching Millennial Farmer, and he talks about using 92-day corn instead of 107-day corn. So I wonder if we're going to see a lot of, if we're going to see a lot more farmers switching to 92-day corn. Now, the only disadvantage of switching to a 92-day corn is we're going to have lower yields. But at this rate, we had lower yields anyway last year due to all of the crop damage and all the flooding that we had, parts of the Delta, across North Dakota and South Dakota, Minnesota, parts of Nebraska were underwater for a lot of the year. So we will have to see, guys. Interesting spring so far, very active. We're seeing lots of tornadoes. We're seeing lots of severe thunderstorms. We actually got a thunderstorm here in upstate New York last night with temperatures only at 45 degrees. Thunder and lightning everywhere, heavy rain. But again, the temperature was not over 45 degrees. So these are some crazy times indeed, folks. Stay home, stay safe, and watch this damn weather too while we're at it. Mara, would you like to say goodbye to everybody before we sign off? Are we going live on the sister?
I was just going to ask you that, Jake. Hi, everyone.
I'm game if you're game.
All my friends and family in the chat. We just love you. Yes, Richard asked if we were going to head over to WTF Sky and, just do the crazy corona virus chat.
We could talk a lot about that. There's some.
I do have a lot to sort of bitch about, if you know what I mean, Jake. First off, I want to say hi. We have a lot of people in the chat. So who do we got? We got Doug, Eduardo, Edward, Jesse,
Knife Collector,
Marie Mitchell, Matt Bros, Richard,
Body,
Tugta. Said she
Roma,
Tugta,
and Randy. Can't forget Randy.
Shut up, Jake. Tugta. I'm sorry. Okay, I gotta be serious here. I'm gonna be Debbie Downer now. Tugta put, when she first came into the chat, received an email that there was a case at her mother's nursing facility and the individual has been taken to the hospital. So I'm really hoping she doesn't want her mom to get it, but we are pulling for that as well. That is not good news. We had something similar in one of the nursing homes, probably 5 minutes away from our house, and so far, so good. So hopefully that'll give you some hope. Marie Mitchell asked about a 3-day blackout. I haven't heard anything about that. There is typically every April, habitually since I've been on YouTube, early 2016, and even a decade or two prior, there's always a 3 days of darkness thing. There's all kinds of biblical prophecies about April and 3 days of darkness. I take it with a grain of salt. It's, it happens every year. That's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and vote no on that one.
And then I would like to say hi to Jeff from the Nemesis Project. So he's a blast from the past from WTF Sky Gang. So it's always good to see him. So are we going to go over there?
Yes, we are. We're going to go ahead and wrap over here at the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Mari, thank you for...
I was going to rattle more names out.
Well, go ahead.
Jason Smith. He wanted me to help you learn how to internet a little bit because you layered your maps. I mean, it's not a big deal, but I noticed.
As far as I'm concerned, if y'all want to start donating to that GSM piggy bank...
if you want to help us pay our rent now.
I'm paid like an amateur, so I'm going to act like an amateur.
We get that a lot sometimes. People are like, "Hi, you could be so much more professional, or you could sound like this, Jake." And that's not the point. It's like, we're not robots.
We're doing this on our free time.
Real, and it's no fun. Like, if it's all robotic and like the real news.
We used to do it like that. Mari and I used to do...
It's not even real news on TV. It's all fake. Like, they're reading off of scripts. Jake goes unscripted. I like his unscripted weather forecast, but a lot of people, they like more of your climate banter. We love Jake rants. Well, and people like my rants.
Well, look, guys, I'd love to get on one right now, but I went to What's Up With That, and really the majority of the articles are about the virus. So, and I just don't want to bring that to our listeners here. Guys, I want to try to put some kind of normalcy back into our daily lives and hoping that just reporting the news about crops, about weather, about earthquakes and the sun, hopefully gets us feeling a little bit like normal at times. Mari, do you have anything else?
Nate says, God bless you guys. God bless you. Everyone take care. And if you want to go over to WTF Sky and hear us have some casual banter about current events, I will pop a link right in the chat as we speak, Jake. I'm going to do it.
All right, sounds good. Yep, we're going to continue the conversation over at WTF Sky. Maury's actually the parent company of this channel here.
The original.
But we will keep topic to topic here. Guys, we will hope to see you over there in just a few, probably about 10 o'clock. We're going back live. But thank you for tuning in to the Grand Solar Minimum channel and making us your choice for Grand Solar Minimum news. Until next time, we will talk soon. Stay safe, everybody.
Do you like this show? Give us a thumbs up. Want to support us more? Share to your favorite social media platform. Buy a t-shirt or become a Patreon. All links are in the description below.